Akvato namase zamannalapati sani sadatu chama.
Kuma Gyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Adunulambito Bujo Kanakabhatatu Sankirtanai Kapitaro Kamalaya Tato Vishwambaro Vijabaro Yugadharma Palo Vande Jagat Priyakaro Karunabhataro Vande Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Sahodito Gurudai Pushpavanto Chitra Sangdo Tamuno Vandeham Shri Ramakrishna Abhayo Charano Sako Sukado Paramanando Sundaro Subalapriyo Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye.
Hare Krishna. Shri Gaudiya Vaishnava Guru Parampara Ki Jai. Śrī Jīva Gosvāmī Ki Jai. Sat Sandarbhas Ki Jai. Ananta Kota Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Glorious devotees, thank you for attending another presentation on Śrīla Jīva Gosvāmī's Sri Krishna Sandarbha. We will continue. We are in the beginning Anuchetas of the Krishna Sandarbha, wherein we are dealing with the Paribhāṣā Sutra of the Srimad Bhagavatam, spoken by Sutta Goswami. And this is a core element of Gaudiya Siddhanta, along with the fact that the Supreme Absolute Truth can be seen variously by different spiritual aspirants. Vedanti tat tattva vidas tattvamyas jnanamadvayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti subjite. So this one understanding, leading, of course, to the cohesive understanding of Śrīla Jīva Gosvāmī of Achinta Bheda Bheda Tattva. So this apprehension or understanding of the absolute reality and how different spiritual aspirants can view that absolute reality differently based on their perspective developed over time and in association. And going forward with that, whether they see as Brahman, Paramatma, or Bhagavan, to this wonderful pronouncement of the superior position of Bhagavan Sri Krishna. Iti chamsa kala pumsa Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayaṁ Indrari Vyakulam Lokam Mridayanti Yuge Yuge. So at this point in his Krishna Sandarbha, which is the fourth of the Sandarbhas, and the first four Sandarbhas deal with Sambandha Gyan, the Sambandha of Gaudiya Vaishnavism is being firmly established. And we will find that in this particular Sandarbha, there is the emphasis of the personal manifestation of the Supreme Lord in his own transcendental glory. In the last Sandarbha, we dealt with the Paramatma manifestation, which is the general conceptual, as the general understanding of the Supreme Lord in relationship to the world that we are familiar with. But this understanding of Krishna, the Lord in the world that he lives in, is somewhat unique to Gaudiya Vaishnavism. You will not find this understanding existing in all Vaishnav traditions. And as we even saw in our discussion last week, Jiva Goswami pointed out that even Madhvacharya considered that all the various, there was not one bit of difference between all the various manifestations that Sutta Goswami was speaking of in his list of avataric descents of divinity into human society. So not an ounce of difference. Whereas at Gaudiyas, we see that there is a hierarchy. Then Jiva Goswami extensively went through arguments in support of. So we're going to continue in today's presentation to read from Jiva Goswami's Krishna Sandarbha, and this will continue for a couple more classes, if not more. For Jiva Goswami is truly pounding the post of this Krishna conception, just as when His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami brought Krishna consciousness into the Western world in a very profound way, a very dynamic way, continually, repeatedly throughout his presentation, either spoken words or written, the idea being the same: Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We went over a little bit in the last discussion this idea of hermeneutics, and we emphasized, in even looking at the standard definition of hermeneutics, that definition being hermeneutics is the theory and mythology of interpretation, especially the interpretation of scriptural texts, wisdom literature, and philosophical texts. Hermeneutics is more than interpretative principles or methods used when immediate comprehension fails, and it includes the art of understanding and communication. So taking that part of the definition, that it includes the art of understanding and communication, and seeing that from the perspective of our Gaudiya tradition, we look at that understanding and ability to communicate with the terminology in Sanskrit of Shastra Yukti. And Jiva Goswami makes a strong case for the fact that Shastra Yukti for the practitioner is more of a praman, has more evidentiary value than the Shastra itself. Now, of course, in our tradition and in all the Vaishnav traditions, all the traditions that look to the Veda for spiritual revelation, Shastra holds the supreme position, but Shastra's being in the topmost position in the hierarchy of Pramāṇ also has to be seen in light of our position. So Shastra, yes, of course, is the highest Pramāṇ, but for us as practitioners, what is most applicable to our place, time, and circumstance in apprehending the realities of spiritual life, what is most important to us is to receive instruction from those that have themselves realized the absolute truth. So that realization is extremely important. And that realization, with that realization, they're able to give us Shastra that in a way that is readily digestible for us, according to our position, according to our kari or our qualification. Now, we're going to see as we go forward now in Jīva Gosvāmī's presentation and fortification of the Paribhāṣā Sutra for us as Gaudiya Vaishnavas, and the significance and the way Shastra Yukti is employed by those excellent emperors of Shastric understanding in our Gaudiya line, the Goswāmīs. Jīva Gosvāmī is going to exemplify to the nth degree this quality of Shastra Yukti. And that is going to be a major part of where we're going in our in our exploration today of his Krishna Sandarbha. So a quick summary of what got us here. We're now in the 29th Anucheta, and Jīva Gosvāmī has begun by showing the universality of the Bhagavata's Paribhāṣā Sutra, that Krishna is that supreme manifestation. And he himself has raised doubts. So just to go quickly over those, a doubt is now raised in this regard. This single statement establishing Krishna as an Amsi is in contradiction to many other statements confirming him as an Amsa. Should it not be interpreted as an guna nuvad or eulogy? And in our last discussion, he went through various arguments showing clearly that no, it's not just a way of showing some appreciation of the avataric descent known as Lord Krishna, and that, but rather that it is a specific manifestation of the Supreme form, and that manifestation is the Amsi, the source of all the other avatars that do descend. So they're not all equal. There is a hierarchy. He dealt with Madhva's argument, and so many things were there. So this first canto, first he dealt with it in dealing with the way that Sutta Goswami presented the various avatars and how he worked up to the verse, the Paribhāṣā Sutra. So the mystery of Bhagavan's appearances, Janma Guyadhyaya, which is the secret of the avataric, the appearances of the various avatars, is itself the sutra for all the statements describing the avatars, because it informs us of them, and because all subsequent elaborated descriptions of the avatars made later on in the Bhagavata are amplifications of this first account alone. And there's some repetition here today, but this is to, again, fortify where we are now. Again, he uses another term in addition to paribhāṣā. He uses the term in his Anuchedas, Jiva does, of pratijna. Among the statements describing the avatars known as avatars other than Krishna, know that avatars other than Krishna to be portions, amsa, of the Purusha, whereas Krishna is to be known as Svayaṁ Bhagavān. Paribhāṣā, or authoritative dictum, is defined as a statement that establishes a rule where there was none before. And he showed that this is the first statement of a authoritative dictum in the Bhagavata, and therefore was to be accepted as such. Again, all these are arguments to support the Paribhāṣā Sutra and to refute the argument that the Paribhāṣā Sutra could also be seen just as a way of eulogizing the Krishna avatar. Then he goes on in that 29th Anucheda, true erudition lies in interpreting the seemingly opposing statements in accordance with this paribhāṣā. Because Srimad Bhagavatam establishes the substance of the highest truth, and because it pertains to the essential meaning even of those other scriptures, its paribhāṣā amounts to being the governing rule for those scriptures as well. So Jiva again is making very, very profound statements in his Krishna Sandarbha, and he's already warned us of in the beginning of the Tattva Sandarbha, this presentation is for those who are seeking the Krishna understanding. So other Vaishnavas may not be pleased with the way I'm presenting this knowledge. They may not accept the fact that Srimad Bhagavatam is the topmost Praman. In fact, many of the other Vaishnava traditions will not accept it as the topmost. They would rather rely on the Vedanta Sutra, the principal Upanishads, and Bhagavad Gita. We are looking for the Krishna conception. Why? Because Srila Vyasadeva, he'd already presented all the other scriptural conclusions in the Vedas, in the Vedanta Sutra, in the Mahabharata, in the other Purāṇas. He put all that knowledge out there, and he himself was discontent. His spiritual contentment was only fully realized when he took shelter of the instructions of his spiritual master, Narada Muni, entered into trance, and personally experienced the Krishna conception, personally experienced Svayaṁ Bhagavān, Śrī Krishna, in all of his glory, with all of his associates, in his personal abode. Then he rewrote the Bhagavata, going through all the different stages of realization leading up to the smiling face of Krishna himself in the 10th canto. And again, the Sanatana Goswāmī, we see that he follows a similar course as the Bhagavata itself in his Brihad Bhagavatamrita. All the different levels of devotees in the first canto of his work, and all the different levels of the environments for the practice of devotion to the Lord in his second part with Gopakumar's journey. So all this leading up to the smiling face of Krishna, the smiling Leela of Krishna, as presented in the 10th canto and in the concluding chapters of the Brihad Bhagavatamrita. In this first section of the 29th Anucheta, Jiva went on to show that in this manner, it has been established in the view of Srimad Bhagavat that itself, that this paribhāṣā is supremely powerful. Such being the case, then, since Srimad Bhagavat overrides the authority of all other scriptures, as was already established in the first Sandarbha, and will be again in this one, the learned recognize that other scriptures as well are to be interpreted solely in accordance with this Paribhasa Sutra. Now we come to the subsection, the second subsection of this 29th Anucheta. This 29th Anucheta deals specifically with establishing the Paribhasa Sutra, and he's done that in the very first subsection, and now he is going to educate us as students aspiring to fully enter into this Krishna conception of divinity, and through that Sambandha Gyan, aspiring to, through practice, attaining some position of loving service to that manifestation of divinity, Sri Krishna in Vraj. So the rest of this 29th Anucheta is going to be a schooling on what we first discussed, that being Shastra Yugi, how to look at Shastra and how to interpret Shastra, which is hermeneutics, how to interpret Shastra. And in this case, that interpretation is the application of the Paribhasa Sutra in other places in the Srimad Bhagavatam where one could read different statements and not see that Krishna is the original supreme Godhead, but rather we could be misdirected by misconceptions that would accept Krishna as equal to other manifestations of divinity, other avataric descents, and not being the topmost manifestation, as Madhvacharya saw all manifestations of God as equally being on an equal level. Now, of course, there's no distinction, but there is also the esoteric truths, the ontology of the Godhead and how he manifests himself, and how these avatars descend through a portion of his portion. So Jiva Goswāmī continues. It will now be demonstrated how apparently conflicting statements from Srimad Bhagavatam are to be interpreted according to this paribhāṣā. In the statement, he, Krishna, appeared there in the Yadu dynasty as an amsa. The word amsena, by, as, or along with, apart, means along with his amsa, Śrī Baladev. So Jiva Goswāmī has taken this portion of a verse from the beginning of the 10th canto, Titram Sena Vitir Nashya, and he's said that this Amsena here needs to be seen and interpreted in this way, that Krishna appeared along with his Amsa Baladev. It should not be interpreted to mean that Krishna is an Amsa, equal to the other avataric descents. He's going to go through quite a few verses here, and we're going to read through them and just present systematically his anucheda. And we should be able to, by carefully hearing the way he presents these various slokas, that will enlighten us as to a proper interpretation according to the Paribhāṣā Sutra. So he goes on, number 2, in the statement, and this is again from the 10th canto, the earth became exceedingly radiant due to the 2 partial manifestations of Hari. The word kala, an energetic expansion, refers to the earth, and the word abhyam by these 2 means by Sri Balaram and Krishna. Thus the meaning is the earth, which is the kala of Bhagavan Hari, became exceedingly radiant due to Balaram and Krishna. So the word kala here needs to be applied to the earth. Goes on to another verse, again from the 10th canto. The real meaning of the statement, O Mother Devaki, by your good fortune and for our well-being, the Supreme Person, who is Bhagavan himself, has entered your womb by a part, Amsena. It is as follows. So the real meaning of that verse is as follows. And Jiva Goswāmī writes, O Mother Devaki, he who previously appeared for our well-being through his partial expansions, such as Matsya, has now entered your womb in his own direct form. Jiva Goswāmī continues. In the statement, thereafter the effulgent Devaki bore within her consciousness, transferred from that of Vasudeva, a part of Bhagavan, Achyuta, who is auspicious for the entire world. The word Achyutamsa, translated here as a part, amsa, of Bhagavan Achyuta, is to be taken rather as a locative bahuvrihi compound, referring to a subject who is other than the individual components of the compound. Achyuta amsa would then signify that entity who includes within his being all amsas, such as Achyuta. This interpretation is validated by the explanation given later in this book, Anucheta 90, that when the complete whole, Amsi, avatarically descends into the material world, all of his parts, Amsas, are contained within him. It is precisely due to his all-encompassing completion, Purnatvena, that he, Sri Krishna, is qualified in the same sense by the adjectives Sarvatmakam, who is the self of all beings, and Atmabhutam, who is manifest by virtue of his very own self. So we're seeing a pattern here. Jiva Goswāmī is taking verses where if we were simply to take a literal translation, we might read into the verse a different meaning than the understanding of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. So as Gaudiya Vaishnavas, he is schooling us in all these verses where we're seeing these terms kala and amsa. You need to apply the Paribhāṣā Sutra to these verses and then translate them in accordance with that understanding. Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayaṁ. He goes on, and this is an interesting argument he makes here. The common people of Mathura, who are not very knowledgeable, also said, these two, Balaram and Krishna, have appeared here in the house of Vasudeva as amsas of Bhagavan Hari himself, who is Narayan. Here also, by the inspiration of Saraswati, the word amsena means along with all their amsas. Now, Jiva Goswāmī is going to go deeply into this later in the Krishna Sandarbha. He's mentioned the 90th Anucheta regarding when Krishna comes, all of the various other manifestations of the Lord are included within his being. They're all originally coming from him, and because of that, they never really leave him. They are part of his essential nature. So that, of course, will be comprehensively covered later, but Jiva Goswāmī is already bringing into the discussion here in looking at various statements from the Bhagavatam, that logic and that spiritual understanding. Some commentary to further bring this point home. Śrī Jīva Gosvāmī here comments that the statement is made by those who are not particularly well versed in scriptural conclusions, implying that it cannot be taken as authoritative in an absolute sense. In other words, it's not that the statement of the made by those present in the wrestling arena is to be given a position of complete spiritual authority. This is an observation of the common people as to the nature of Krishna and Balaram when they entered the wrestling arena. So they're not the individuals that are speaking the verse are not in the position of being a teacher. They're just making a casual observation, and their observation, their statement in regards to Krishna and Balaram is based on their particular level of understanding. And these are not, the people that made this statement are not, they're not really well versed in scriptural conclusions. They're not from the Brahminical class. They're not teachers in society of spiritual revelation. Nevertheless, even if accepted as is, all right, so you want to make them spiritual teachers. The word amsena is to be understood as meaning along with all their parts. The intent would then be to say, these two have appeared here in the house of Vasudeva, along with all the amsas of Bhagavan Hari himself, who is Narayan. So Jiva looks at it from both ways. He first of all looks at from the fact that those speaking the verse are not well versed in scripture and scriptural conclusions. But if you want to accept them as authorities, then the statement that they made should be read in this way in light of the Paribhāṣā Sutra. Again, the ruling authority of the Paribhāṣā. Jiva Gosvāmī continues in his Anucheda. And similarly, those two Krishnas, Krishna and Arjuna, who are the supports of the Yadu and Kuru dynasties, are amsas of Bhagavan Hari, who appeared in this world to relieve the earth of its burden. Jiva Gosvāmī goes on to say, in this verse, the word agato is a past passive participle used in the active voice. And the word Kṛṣṇa is the dual number of the accusative case. From this perspective, the meaning of the verse is as follows. These two, known as Nara and Narayan, are amsas of the Purusha, who is the seed of the various avatars. Being the subjects of the verb, it is they who came to Krishna and Arjuna who are taken as the objects of the sentence. So now Jiva's taking an approach of looking to the particular Sanskrit words and giving us, and looking at those words and giving us an explanation of those words that comprise the sloka from the fourth canto that corresponds with the Paribhāṣā Sutra. Again, we see this excellence, this emperor position of Jiva Gosvāmī in his translation, keeping at the forefront of the entirety of his presentation of what's in the Srimad Bhagavatam, a presentation that conforms perfectly to the Paribhāṣā Sutra of the Bhagavatam spoken by Sutta Goswami. Jiva Gosvāmī continues, the meaning is that they, Nara and Narayan, entered into them Arjuna and Krishna. How are these two Krishnas depicted? They have appeared to relieve the burden of the earth. The word cha also implies that in addition, they have appeared to display their other pastimes, which are pleasing to the devotees. Yadu, Kurud, Vahal, referring to Krishna and Arjuna, means the two who have appeared in the Yadu and Kuru dynasties, respectively. Jiva Goswami continues. And again, we're going a little more deeply into this particular understanding in regards to Nara and Narayan, these manifestations of Krishna and Arjuna. And it's a very interesting intellectual pursuit that Jiva is taking us on. The statement from the Agama, Nara entered into Arjuna, whereas Krishna into Narayan himself, specifically shows that Nara entered into Arjuna. He, however, who is spoken of as the eternally self-established Narayan himself in statements such as, are you not Narayan, the self of all embodied beings? That's spoken by Brahma to Krishna. It is again Sri Krishna, implying that it is he who manifests as Narayan and not vice versa. So you can see Jiva is unpacking and he's taking us. Now let's look at this in perspective. Lord Brahma himself brings out the proper perspective in his prayers after the Brahma Vimohan Leela. Are you not Narayan, the self of all embodied beings? You're here before me as Krishna. So Jiva's saying, Brahma is supporting the idea that Narayan is manifested from Lord Krishna. This is to be understood as the intended meaning here, as deduced from the following logical principle. And now he looks at it from another vantage point. Marriage and friendship should take place between those who are equal to each other in wealth, birth, influence, appearance, and future prospects, but never between a superior and an inferior. As it is said in the Vishnu Dharma, one who knows you, Arjuna, knows me, Krishna, and one who follows you follows me. O son of Pandu, I know you to be none different from myself. This statement by Bhagavan Sri Krishna himself, spoken to Arjuna, indicates that Arjuna's friendship with Krishna is more complete than that of Nara towards Narayan. Thus, Nara's entry into Arjuna, that of a part into the whole, is quite appropriate. Now, this is Shastra Yukti. This is Jiva Goswami saying, Krishna and Arjuna are friends, and friends are equals. And because Narayan is subservient to the Krishna manifestation of divinity, that Narayan is coming forth from Krishna, and Arjuna and Krishna are friends, they're equal. So the Nara manifestation is also coming forth from Arjuna. Very interesting spiritual logic here. The spiritual logic that lets us enter into the mysteries of the Bhagavata Purāṇa. Wonderful spiritual logic that this is why Jiva Goswami is recognized as the topmost logician, and we fall at his feet for being able to bring to our attention these kinds of conclusions that teach us how the viewpoint, the Shastra Yukti, is properly put forth by the Lord and his associates. So when the Lord personally comes as a sadhika, and with sadhikas, siddhas, as they come in this way, Krishna and his eternal associates, to teach us by both their example and by the methodology of their approach to Shastra. It allows us to enter into these are secret understandings, secret of secrets, which are revealed to the most intimate associates. And here, Lord Chaitanya has come and he has broken open the secrets and the most profound revelations available in the Bhagavatam, so that we can enter into the most profound revelation in relationship to the Supreme Lord. So much so that Artha, Dharma, Kama, Moksha is tossed aside by the Gaudiyas. I have no desire for any of those things. Lord Chaitanya speaks to us in his Siksastikam. And as for liberation, if I'm involved in this kind of revelation in relationship to Krishna, what need is there? I need to go nowhere. I'm in the shelter of Krishna. He is there. He's speaking to me directly through the sadhus, through the Bhagavatam. This association is as much being in Krishna's personal association as is needed. And if through some development of profound love, it matures to what one would call liberation, that's okay too. Some commentary in regards to this. Krishna is called Narayan because he is the source of Narayan and thus has the qualities of Narayan. It is for this reason that Brahma addressed Krishna as Narayan in his prayers. If Krishna is the source of Narayan, then Arjuna cannot be a partial manifestation of Nara. Friendship is between equals. So if Krishna is superior to Narayan, then his friend Arjuna must be superior to Nara, who is a friend of Narayan. Therefore, the meaning of the word Naravesha and ingression of Nara is that Nara entered into Arjuna. Jiva Goswāmī continues. Sometimes the use of the word amsa is understood to mean resembling an amsa, because although complete, Krishna is not clearly manifest to common people as indicated in the Gita. I am not manifest to all, being covered by my yoga maya. Consequently, he merely appears as an amsa to such people. Jiva Goswāmī is again, there are people that are only going to see Krishna as an amsa. And Krishna even spoke of this to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita. I'm sometimes covered by my internal potency in such a way that they can't see my complete divinity. They cannot enter into the mystery of Kṛṣṇastu Bhagavan Svayaṁ. He goes on, for example, in the verse, Krishna is equal to Narayan in qualities, Narayana Samogunai. Garga's sole intention is to show that Narayan, who is the very Lord of Vaikuntha, is equal to Krishna in qualities. Again, Jiva giving a more profound entrance into Garga's statements regarding Krishna's position, his horoscope, and some commentary in this regard. During Krishna's name-giving ceremony, Gargacharya said that Krishna has qualities equal to Narayan. In this regard, the objection may be raised that when one thing is compared, upameya, to another, upamana, it is normally understood that the object with which anything is compared is superior in quality to the subject of comparison. For example, when it is stated that a person's face is as beautiful as the moon or a lotus flower, it is the moon or lotus that is superior. Following this logic, if Krishna is compared to Narayan, then Narayan should be understood as superior to Krishna. If such were the case, then Krishna could not be Svayaṁ Bhagavān. To this, Śrī Jīva Gosvāmī replies that the phrase Narayana Sama equal to Narayan is a Bahu Vrihi compound. And thus it means one to whom Narayan is equal in qualities. Again, proper interpretation by the sadhus, specifically in this case, Śrīla Jīva Gosvāmī, of a verse from the Bhagavata, showing its meaning in light of the Paribhāṣā Sutra. Garga draws a comparison to Narayan, whom Nanda Maharaj would have considered as God himself, simply to glorify Krishna. But neither Nanda nor any of the cowherds took it as a literal statement, just as it is said on the arrival of a new bride into the household, Lakshmi Devi has come into our house. So again, putting the statement from the Bhagavatam in the context in which it was spoken also assists us in understand a deeper esoteric understanding. So when we see Gargacharya's statement in that regard, and the audience to whom he was speaking, it perfectly reconciles with the time and the place and the circumstance. In our next class, we will continue into the third subsection of the Anucheta, the 29th Anucheta, and we will dive deeply into the Mahakalapura episode, which is Jiva Goswami has gone first to specific verses in the Bhagavatam, some of which we covered today with his assistance in the second subsection of this Anucheta. And in the next subsection, we'll go into an entire narration and how that narration needs to be seen in light of the Paribhāṣā Sutra. With that, I will conclude today. I'll be glad to answer any questions if there are any.
Dulal Prabhu, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay. Yeah, even though you explained it so nicely, and I don't know, I can't get how Nara entered into Arjuna. It's like, I can't get it. I don't get it.
Well, it's a very esoteric understanding that Jiva Goswami is applying to the situation. And his application is based upon the intimacy on the topmost level of spiritual revelation, the intimacy between Krishna and his eternal associates. Truly, those that are in friendship with Krishna are equal. And so much so that in Vraj Bhakti, in Vraj, they're seen as equal in every way. Now, the love of the Krishna's friends, and Arjuna's a friend, but he's a Puri Sambandha. He's a friend in the city, but still the friendship is there. But there's an underlying appreciation for Krishna's position of Aishwarya in relationship to his godhood. However, the force of that friendship is still what Jiva Goswami is using as his explanation of the fact that they are equals. So in Vraj, we know that Krishna sees his friends as equal in every way. Sometimes he even carries them on his shoulders. They don't see the divinity of Krishna in any way there. He's one of them, and they love him. But they all love him the most. And that was completely brought out in the Brahma Vimohan Leela, how even though everybody in Vraj, of course, they love each other immensely, but their topmost spiritual emotion in love flows towards Krishna, no matter what their relationship may be, whether it's Sambandha Nuga or Kama Nuga. The love runs and flows towards Krishna. But his love is flowing back to them, and there's nothing that he does not give to them, including all of his opulence, all of his power. So they're friends in every way, and they're equals in every way in Vraj Bhakti. Jiva is taking that understanding of the deep friendship between Krishna and his eternal associates. He's taking it and he's using that as a praman to establish the fact that when there's statements in the Bhagavatam regarding these other manifestations of Krishna Arjuna, Nara and Narayan, when he's making those statements, we can see the relative position of those manifestations of Krishna and Arjuna, respectively, Narayan and Nara. We can see them in light of this most esoteric of spiritual understandings of the equality between Krishna and his friends. So because of that equality on the topmost level of Sakya between Krishna and Arjuna, because they are that close, it necessarily follows that other manifestations of them would be subordinate to them in that topmost relationship. Does that kind of make it clear?
Yeah, that helped a lot. just the last sentence. I need a little more clarity on that. But I get it, except for he started saying other manifestations. Okay, what did you say again? The last sentence.
Well, these are other manifestations. Narayan is the manifestation of Krishna.
Yeah.
Narayan is coming forth from Krishna. And what Jiva is saying is it naturally follows because Narayan is friends with Nara. So they're equal and they're on a lower level. There's a hierarchy, and Krishna's at the top. Krishna and Arjuna are at the top. Nara and Narayan are below them. So Nara naturally is below Arjuna, and we must see that Nara is coming forth from Arjuna, not the other way around, which is the way some people could interpret some statements in the Bhagavatam.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, that's awesome. It is very esoteric.
Yes, it is. It is wonderful.
Yeah, thanks for that great explanation, though. That really helped me a lot.
Hare Krishna. If there are no other questions, I'll take your leave and sincerely thank you for your association. Vanchakalpatubhischa, kripasindhubheva-cha, patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavibhyo namo namaha.
Dulal Chandra Prabhu ki jai.
Krishna Kirtana Ganana Tanapano Premamritam Manidhi Dhira Dhira Jana Priyau Priyakarau Nirmasanau Pujitau Śrī Chaitanya Bharau Bhuvi Bhuva